Hi, welcome to what? I'll start that again. Hi, welcome to what? Series 15 and number 21. And we're going to talk about Jacob meeting angels. It says in chapter 32 and verse 1, so Jacob went on his way and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." And he called the name of the place Mahanaim. Now, angels of God met him. Now, this sounds a bit bizarre, doesn't it? We don't exactly know what this means. In some ways, angelic beings seem to be, I don't know, it seems to have a normality in the Old Testament in some ways, but they met with him. Perhaps God wanted Jacob to know that he was under great care of God. Okay, and it's a wonderful, revelation of God's presence and care after he separated from Laban, after all of the issues that have been family there. Separation from the world often leads to greater insight for the believer. Our personal, Manaheims occur at some time, and Jacob, well, he sees this amazing sight, these angelic dudes. He was leaving the past behind and he was going to something else. And all of a sudden he's confronted with angelic beings. And he says, this is God's camp. Literally, Jacob observed that he was not alone. He was there with a bunch of angels and his family. We've got to remember all of this is all packaged together. It's not as if God's angels just joined him. They were with him the entire time. Now, Jacob could see God's angels with him, and that was the difference, I suppose. It provided him great encouragement. Angels were thought to be higher beings than humanity and are ordained by God to be servants of God's people, serving God's people and serving God. As they served Jesus, you can read that, as they served Elisha as well, and he had these eyes open to see angelic hosts surrounding them. John Paton, a missionary to the New Hebrides Islands, told of how one night hostile natives surrounded his mission's headquarters, intent on driving the Patons out of their home and killing them. He and his wife prayed through the entire night, and when daylight finally came, their attackers were gone. A year later, the chief of the tribe became a Christian, and Paton actually asked him about that night, and the chief replied, "Who were all the men who were there with you?" The missionary explained it was only him and his wife there. The chief insisted that he had seen hundreds of big men in shining garments and swords circling the mission headquarters. So the natives were afraid to attack. What a story, isn't it? That night in the New Hebrides Islands, there was a double camp. The angels were there with the missionary family. Yeah. Spurgeon thought that about the great number of angels that God has available for his people's help. It may be that every star is a world thronged with his servants of God who are willing and ready to dart like flames upon Jehovah's errands of love. That's a big way of putting it, isn't it? If God chooses for us to be protected by angels, hey, we're going to take that, isn't it? And I dare say that we don't see them. We do not see them. I do not ask that you may see angels still, if that happens. But what it is, I would love to know that God's presence is with us. And if that is how he is protecting us, I'm going to take that any day of the week. Perhaps the Lord favoured Jacob with the sight of the angels because of his particular faith position at the time. Anyway, verse 3-6 goes on, and this talks about Jacob's message to his brother. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "Speak thus to my lord Esau. Thus your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find favour in your sight. Yeah. So the messengers, they're returning to Jacob. They say, we came to your brother, and he is also coming to meet you with 400 men. Whoa, what's this going on here? Jacob's trying to be nice and make a reconnection, and all of a sudden it seems like he's bringing an entourage. But when we look at it, Jacob sent messages before himself to his brother. So he wants to reconcile. There's 20 more years where Esau had threatened to kill him. Yeah. Notice it says to us that I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. Jacob wasn't boasting. He just wanted Esau to know that he was now a wealthy guy, that he had not come to take anything from Esau. Jacob tried to anticipate his brother's thinking and hoped to answer Esau's concerns. Notice what is happening here. The servants they came back and said, he's coming to meet you with 400 men who are with him. When the messengers returned, Jacob heard the news. He was coming with 400 men. Wow, because Jacob could not bring himself to think the best of Esau, he was convinced the 400 men were an army intending on destroying him and his family. Yeah. So Jacob is in fear and is panicking. Verse 7 and 8. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels, into two companies. And he said, if Esau comes to one company and attacks it, the other company which is left will escape. Okay, there's some thought process going into this. Jacob was afraid and distressed. When Laban confronted him with a hostile militia, Jacob boldly stood up to him and spoke his mind. Yet Jacob was afraid to meet Esau. This was because Jacob knew who he was, but he also knew he was right with Laban, didn't he? But he knew he was wrong with Esau. It's funny how history comes back to us, isn't it? Jacob had just been delivered from Laban, but he was possessed or oppressed by the thought processes that he was going to meet his brother. He had wronged his brother. He'd done the wrong thing, and he was aware of that. It's interesting, isn't it? Conscience does make cowards of us all sometimes. Actually, that's a quote from Shakespeare. As Jacob had no strength before Esau because of his guilt, many Christians today also are hindered by the memory of their past failings. We need to get over that. We need to put stuff at Jesus' feet. Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Before Jacob left home after his brother swore to kill him, Jacob's mother told him, until his brother anger turns away from you and he forgets what you have done to him, then I will send and bring you from there. Rebekah never sent for Jacob. Therefore, he had every reason to believe Esau was still angry with him 20 years later. But Jacob also had many reasons to believe God would protect him. He seems to have forgotten God's promise to Jacob. He also seemed to have forgotten that God had set a special camp of angels there to protect him. Isn't it easy for us to forget what God's done for us? Bless you.